Lightning like Steve McQueen. I'm in the fast lane when the light turns green. And I built tough, I ain't nothing but grit. Cause I made rugged blood, sweat, and spit. Yeah, like a horse I fly. Better push yourself in for a bumpy ride. I like to play hard, but I work harder. And I weather the storm cause I'm built stronger.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back. We are live. It is the Freight Coach Podcast, the top podcast in transportation, coming to you guys every single weekday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central, to break down some industry headlines, but most importantly, provide some actual insight into what you can do with all of this information. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. This is the real side of freight, ladies and gentlemen. And I say that before every single show. And what I mean by that is I only speak with transportation professionals, because at the end of the day, you guys, I want to talk to the right individuals who have done what you're looking to do or who are currently doing what you're trying to achieve. So you can take that information, apply it, utilize it, and see a meaningful difference in your business and your life. All right, you guys, we got a very special guest. I'm just going to bring her up right away. I'll save the rest of everything. You guys know what to do. I know you're going to get value, so just make sure you subscribe and share out there. But, you know, building a team, hiring people and doing all of that, it can be challenging. You know, as somebody who's kind of going through that process myself, finding that solution when you need them is like, you know, again, especially when you're bootstrapping a business and stuff like that, of, you know, when can you hire? When can you afford to hire? When can you actually grow? We're going to kind of talk about all of that. We're going to talk about nearshoring as well, and that option that is out there. So I have the business development and partnerships manager of, I want to say Swerks, but it's S-Works, my friend Mia. Mia, what is going on?
How are you? How's it going? And it's whatever works for you. That's what I typically say.
Oh, that's a dad joke. You guys should put that on a shirt. You guys, I will
like
never
that.
let a dad joke go.
Or on a koozie.
There we go. There we go. So Mia, what's been going on out there in your world? It's been a while. I think it's like we're almost coming up on a year since, like, I think we first met out in Houston last year at Freight Fest.
Yeah, and that was actually my first time in Texas as well. But things are well. We've definitely slowed down on the travel. I was just, saying before, this, I think, is my first month of no travel. Knock on wood, though, because I'll probably pick up another trip or something along the lines. But things are well, definitely busy, trying to adapt to the market as everybody else is. But I'm happy to be here today. So thank you.
No, absolutely. I'm looking forward to this, because it's like everybody's got this facade of perfect world of, oh, this is how you build a business. Everything's just going to work out. As soon as you start your company, you're going to instantly become a millionaire. You're going to have everything figured out. You're never going to have problem hiring the right people or building a team. You're going to have unlimited resources. And then you just snap your fingers. And then that's just how it's done.
Like Disney World.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you couldn't tell, I'm being extremely sarcastic with that statement, because, that's something that, like we go through a lot, and we think about that. Like, when's the right time to hire people? And it's like, do you take that risk and hire somebody before you need them? And now everybody who doesn't own a company is going to chime in and say, yeah, do that. But it's like, the reality is when you're bootstrapping something, you're following a budget, dollar in, dollar out, when is it the right time to take that risk and stuff? And I think that with what we're seeing out there, I think these last 4 years or so have really changed the landscape on how you can build and scale your team. We are a global economy, whether people want to admit it or not. And there are additional resources that are out there. So this is, I think, the second time that I've ever talked about nearshoring on my show. So like, what is nearshoring? What is it that you guys do?
Yeah, definitely. Great question. So obviously nearshoring is super important nowadays and a really hot topic. And I think that nearshoring in the freight industry can sometimes be mistaken and misunderstood because it means multiple things in reality. Some people look at it as, moving freight over the border. So, kind of that cross-border movement like in Mexico. But when we're talking about nearshoring, we're really talking about outsourcing functions or outsourcing talent or labor. So really what that means is finding individuals, finding people in other areas. So for example, whether we're talking about Latin America, and that's typically in that close proximity, right, of time zone, of cultural affinity as well. But then offshoring is another term you might hear often. And that's typically when we're talking about somewhere in Asia, maybe the Philippines or India. But really in the history, we've seen a lot of this movement to nearshoring after the pandemic, obviously, because that opened up a lot of technology and ways for that remote aspect and international teams to connect. But another piece that's pretty interesting, I would say, is something I was reading this week. A stat says that between 2020 and 2023, over 40% of supply chain leaders started to implement nearshoring into their business and their long-term game plan. So I don't think the answer is very black and white as to when is the right time to do it. I think that's kind of the problem. It's very different for everybody. The budget that you have, the resources you have, your understanding, are you doing a long-term game plan and a short-term game plan? Those are all things that are really going to affect, when is the right time to hire, or what right time even means for that business.
Yeah. What do you think is the biggest misconception out there? Because anytime, you hear that term nearshoring and then, Central America or the Philippines or India or anything like that, like everybody instantly has their first common misconception. What are the biggest misconceptions do you think out there for that?
Yeah, I think the biggest one, or the one that I hear the most often, is that we don't have skilled labor more than just back office. And I typically say, it makes sense to start with your back office, right? Maybe tracking and tracing, maybe some dispatching, things that aren't customer facing, because that's the easiest way to start to gain confidence with that talent and with that provider as well. But that doesn't mean we can't find and place managers. That doesn't mean we can't find and place leads or things of that nature. We like that model of starting with those maybe fresher people and training them up with that company so they can start to build that relationship, and that leads into the long-term relationship and the long-term retention, right? But again, that doesn't mean that you can't request to me a marketing manager today and I can't turn around and find one for you, because we're tapping into a talent pool, right? So it's just really making sure that we understand how to leverage that pool, how to understand their experience, how to understand if somebody is really overqualified for a role, or if that's just something that's part of the culture. Because in Colombia, you see that a lot. A lot of people go and get extra degrees or extra certifications just to build their really curriculum. And so maybe you'll see customers say, hey, that person looks overqualified. Well, let me come here and explain to you, why that might be in that context. And that's really where a provider or a vendor, I think, comes in.
Yeah. So you guys are, you brought up marketing manager there too. So you guys aren't just working exclusively with, like track and trace or like operations or carrier. Like you guys have multiple different departments that you could possibly utilize for that.
Totally. Yeah. So I always say, we do focus in the transportation logistics industry. About 80% or more of our audience is 3PLs and brokerages.
Yeah.
And they typically do start with what I was mentioning before, those back office roles, whether it's operational work or maybe something along the lines of AP, AR, billing, those kinds of things. But in reality, our expertise spans to all the departments, right? So whether that is your tech team, like engineers and developers, whether it's marketing, and those can be designers, or it can be community managers really implementing and posting on your social medias. It can be your sales team, like lead generators or even BDRs. Again, it's a talent pool. So the range of English, the range of experience, those kinds of things exist. And that's where we really ask the customer to be as clear and as, precise as possible in their requests. What is it that you want? Because I could find, in theory, everything, but that might not be what you need and what you want. So the more specific they can be, the better we can create that kind of matching process.
So do you guys have a actual location down? Because you mentioned Colombia. So is it down in Colombia? Do you guys have an office there? Does everybody report into the office? Are they all working remote? What does that look like?
Yeah, so I used to actually live in Colombia, and I opened up our first office in Medellin, which is still there, and has a capacity of over 200 people. And then we also have one in Bogota that's actually maxed out, and we're looking for a larger space as we speak. And then we have an entity in Dominican Republic as well, and that's something that we're branching out to. But about 80%, again, 80 to 85% of our operations is physically in one of the offices, and then the rest will be remote within Colombia. But with that being said, we still make sure that they have the right infrastructure, Wi-Fi, those kinds of things, like enough to be able to even work remote to begin with. But we do really encourage that in-office aspect. Or something that I encourage, this can apply to Colombia or even, the United States, is kind of this ramp up period where you have them training in office in the beginning. It gives them an opportunity to meet their peers, to really, again, be part of that culture and feel part of the community. And as they start to demonstrate themselves, and obviously, through metrics, you're really seeing that performance, then giving them the kind of opportunity or the bonus of achieving the opportunity to move remote, right? And work from home. That to them is a huge incentive and a huge push. So that kind of, again, that ramp up period of moving them from in office to remote or even a hybrid aspect is something we typically encourage and see a lot of success with.
So how are you guys how are you training these individuals, or is it on your guys' clients who, like if you're, working with Freight Coach Logistics, for example, is it on us to interview, train, and develop them? Do you guys have any specific logistics training that you put any of these potential candidates through who you guys have that would face somebody like me? What does that interaction look like?
Great questions. And this is one of my favorite ones because I think this might be another common misbelief. Sometimes people get nearshoring and offshoring confused with outsourcing. And outsourcing, just to put it in very simple terms, is more team-based and it's a project-based as well. So I might give you my website and you're going to take that and you're going to design it and you're going to write everything and you're going to code it and you're going to engineer it and you're going to do literally everything possible. And the way that we work, it's around full-time heads, full-time employees. So with that being said, what we do require is to have them go through kind of like an orientation program. And that's part of the vetting process that we do. It really isn't a step to check that they have all the skills they claim to know on their paper, right? Hard skills, but also the personality piece. Are they going to have a good attitude? Are they showing up on time? Are they asking questions? Because that's a huge piece that they might fool you on the interview, but really seeing them do it day to day is a really big test. So everyone will go through that orientation program, but we actually now have implemented, for lack of a better term, an incubator program, which is what we want to ramp up to be an ongoing and very full out training program. And that program, again, is twofold. So it does work in that vetting piece, but it also works in letting these individuals shadow all parts of the supply chain process, from the beginning steps of booking a load to closing a load to selling it to tracking and making sure that it's getting dropped off, pick up, so on and so forth. Those individuals that's something that we have already done once successfully, and we're doing another second group of individuals to run through that program. And really the point there is to, again, start with those junior profiles, those people that are more moldable, and give them the context of the industry. But then obviously they're going to need those company specific processes, and the customer is going to need to do that. Whether they're a senior with 15 years of experience or someone with 5 days of experience, they're still going to need to know the way that you guys want to run those things. So again, depending on what the request is, whether they need them to come with that industry experience or not, we'll put them in those programs, and then we'll decide who is an apt candidate accordingly.
Yeah, so you guys are essentially filtering through a lot of the fakes, right? Like, well, there's just no other way to put it, right? And I think because I think that's everybody's concern, even when you're hiring everybody on site, is somebody going to filter through the interview process, interview really well, and then just completely hit a brick wall as soon as they start? Like, that's always just like the biggest risk of hiring anybody out there. But, I like you called it an incubator program. I think that's I might just actually steal that for what we do. I'm gonna start calling it the Freight Coach Lab here. And but it because it's like I want to take people and I want to develop talent. I don't want, because like I know a lot of people in this industry. I've met a lot of people in this industry. I know a lot of people who've been in this industry for a very long time, and I wouldn't trust them to dispatch a load of trash ultimately when it boils down to it. I have a very distinct way that I operate. I know that it works. I know that it's the right way to do it. And I want to develop people inside of my system to grow and scale with my company, because like I'm a firm believer in this, Mia. I can teach anybody anything they need to know about freight, the transportation industry, but I can't teach a work ethic. Exactly. And a work ethic is the biggest indicator, in my opinion, because like when you're developing a business or a book of business, however you want to put it, you need grit. Like that's like you need to show up. And this is actually, this isn't a plug for this book, but I'm reading this book called Grit by Angela Duckworth right now. And I'm seeing a lot of those similarities in there, because it is like, you need to be willing to show up every single day and lose 99% of the time, maybe get one win. And that one win might not come every single day. It might come once in the month. And that's just the law of averages, but you need to keep showing up. And that's where the work ethic to me comes into play more than anything, because anybody can make a cold call a couple of days in a row or a couple of weeks in a row. But are you going to do it month after month, year after year, to actually build and scale your operation?
Yep. And that's pretty important that you mentioned that, because another piece that we really dive into is the long-term career building, right? So if this person is going to come in as a dispatcher, nobody wants to be a dispatcher for life, right? Obviously, they have dreams and aspirations. So we really sit to understand with the customer, what's the kind of career path? Where can they go from there? Can they become a team lead for the dispatchers? And then we can kind of promote internally and backfill from there. Because now that dispatcher that was with you, and you thought he was only going to last 6 months, because that's what your normal lifetime is in the United States. Now you've seen he's with you 2-3 years, and now he's become your team lead, and now he becomes X role, right? And so that kind of upward movement is something that our collaborators are looking for. So if our customers are looking for a short-term relationship or a project base, that's when we'll come in and we'll say, honestly, we might not be a good fit for you here, because that's not what they're striving for. And we're not going to put a temporary person in a seat and then now have them on hold again, waiting to see what their future steps are. Are they going to have a job? Something along those lines. That's not how we work.
Yeah, no, I think that a lot of people need to, again, this is I don't have any inside knowledge here or anything like this, but I would assume a lot of people think that, hey, I'm using you guys. Why aren't you guys doing everything? Why do I have to do any of this stuff? When it comes to like training, developing, metrics and everything else, I think like, yeah, a lot of it has got to be, you get out what you put into it, and you need to, because they are a literal direct representation of your company, right? So it's like, and that's the way that I kind of view it is I'm like, if anybody's making calls on my company's behalf, whether they're here in Arizona, Minnesota, the Dominican, Mexico, Colombia, wherever they are, I want them to have the exact same level of training and development that anybody has. Because I think like consistency is the only word that comes to my mind with this. I want every single person inside of my organization to deliver a consistent result out there to the market, to my customers, my carriers, everybody out there. When they're interacting with my company, I want everybody to be set up for success. So I don't view it as, well, my team down in Colombia, like, I'm not going to pay attention to them. They should just figure this all out. They should just know all of this stuff.
Yep. I love that you mentioned that. And I think that happens a lot. They're kind of thinking like, you guys are going to just help us with this side work, and then we're really going to handle the juice of this. And that's just not how we really look at it. These are your employees. They're dedicated to your team, your account. If your business is called the Fright Coach, they are an employee of the Fright Coach, right? I want them wearing orange just like you're wearing orange.
Right.
Those are the kinds of things we want to see. They're dedicated to your team. So we would want them to be doing the same training as your employees in the United States. And I sometimes, kind of counter that to them, because they're like, just do it for me, handle it for me, train them for me, tell them everything. And I'm like, do you want me to build your ICP and your buyer persona? Do you want to just give me access to your CRM and I'll build all your sequences out while I'm at it too? Like that's not really how that works. But that's where we come in, right? I don't expect people to know how to build a business. This might be their first time doing it. So that's where we kind of consult them, when we guide them, when we tell them, here are the things to consider. Here are some maybe templates or some ideas as to what we would suggest to you might be your building blocks or your pillars, the first employees that you might want to implement. We don't want to just be a staffing company that puts warm bodies in chairs, right? That's not what we do. We really want to be a partner. We want to create kind of this community where you can rely on us and count on us. And we need to be on top of everything, right? We need to make sure we're on top of the market. We're understanding what the new technology is giving and where it might lack, and what kinds of things, might be value for our customers. And so building that ecosystem is something that we currently have in place, but it really is a long-term plan to be able to connect, brokers with carriers and shippers and technology platforms, whether it's a TMS or whether it's for pricing, things along those lines, and being able to help them implement it. That's that kind of long-term goal that comes hand in hand with nearshoring.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that, again, everybody needs to attack these scenarios, whether it's nearshoring, or not. Like, I think it's very reflective of how you operate your business. If you're willing to utilize a nearshoring company and then just not train the people who are representing your company out there in the market, right? I think that that's very indicative of how you operate here in the United States as well. And that might be an area where, again, I'm not an entrepreneur guru or anything like that, but I would say if you don't take that into account when you're going out there and utilizing a service like this, it's very reflective of how you're going to operate here in the United States. I think it's very reflective of how you prospect your customers and what value you actually deliver out there into the market. Because, like, again,
Mhm.
I'm nowhere near my end goal and what we're going to build, but I think it's it's easier to set the standard from day one of how it's going to be than try and change the direction as you grow and scale. Cause I think a lot of people think of it like, oh, I'll do this when I get there. No, you need to
Mhm.
operate this way right now. I know some people want to talk shit on this when I say this, but I approach every single day that I am the founder and CEO of a multi-billion-dollar corporation. That is how I attack every single day. That's how my day is structured. That is how I approach social media. A lot, like, I want to get out there and chime in on a lot of stuff, but I keep my mouth shut because I'll stop myself. And like, I value Brad Jacobs in his content
Mhm.
and his book and everything, a lot. And they're like, I've actually caught myself saying this a couple of times. Would Brad Jacobs respond to this? Probably not, because that dude has done what I want to do. He has built multi-billion-dollar corporations, and that's what I'm looking to do. So I attack that. And what I've realized in a lot of the books that I've read and a lot of the people that I follow out there, set the standard from day one and adhere to the standard. It's a lot easier to build an environment around that than it is to change your environment after you hire 5 people or 10 people or something like that. If
Mhm.
you're going to set the standard, you got to set the standard from day one, and it has to be top down. It's not bottom up. It has to be top down, because if you want your employees to be disciplined, if you want your employees to do the work, you better be doing the work as well.
Exactly. No, I agree. And Brad Jacobs also had a bodyguard, so maybe you could start with that.
Yeah, I read that in his book that he had a guy like monitoring people and reading them.
At Fright Waves, I don't know if you saw him at Fright Waves last
No.
year. Well, he literally had a bodyguard following him around.
Did he? That is
Yeah,
awesome.
he did. He did. But anyways, I totally agree, and that's actually the top down is something I say for S Works all the time. I think that our founders have really true values, and you see that really funneled through the rest of the business. And knock on wood, I hope that continues for the whole lifespan of S Works. But that's difficult to do. But also part of why, I was mentioning before, we also have to vet our customers. Some people are built on, being a family business and only US natives, and that kind of mindset. I'm not saying if that mindset is right or wrong. I'm just saying that's
Yeah.
their value proposition and that's how they run. So what's my job there is to really explain to them, hey, if you start to open up here or you start to shift a little bit of your perspective, these are some of the areas we can still support you and not lose sight of your core value. But also understanding that some people are just not going to be receptive to that. Some people, to be very blunt, are racist, and some people just don't believe in nearshoring, or some people maybe don't like to let go, and having somebody else really, in a way, contract your employees can be fearful. And I get those things. So being able to also understand, when somebody might be open and when someone is just not worth your time, that's also something super important.
I kind of look at it now like I was my opinion on nearshoring it's vastly changed since I first started in business for myself, and I think a lot of it is because of the remote work that's out there. And I ask myself now, if you're willing to hire somebody remotely, why does it matter where they are? And my opinion is pretty simple. If I set a deadline that I need something on Wednesday at 2 p.m., it better be done by Wednesday at 2 p.m. I don't care whether you're doing it on the beach somewhere, in the
Mhm.
office, a lot of that. Now, there's some roles that, yeah, I think that it benefits from having an in-person environment that's out
Right.
there. And I understand that, but I also feel like when you're trying to get your stuff off the ground and running, or you know what, maybe you're like, I need to hire somebody, but I don't have the revenue to support 5 roles here or whatever that looks like. You
Mhm.
need to look at every alternative that's out there. And I think that, the stigma that was once there has since evaporated
Yeah.
from that perspective on things. I really do, because I don't know of any company that's in the top 100 of freight brokers that aren't utilizing it at some
Yeah.
level.
You have to. You have to, or you're gonna get left behind at this point. They're all using it and they kind of have to, because once you do, you can't let go of it. I was talking to one of my customers because I was having a lot of calls with people that don't nearshore and have never had an experience, but they don't have the pain, right? They don't have anything that's really pushing them to do so. And so I was talking with my customer and he was like, look, when my team had pitched the idea to use you guys, I hated them. I didn't want to use you guys. I wasn't open to it. I didn't agree with it, but we did it anyways. They gave it a shot. They have over 35 people with us today. He told me,
Yeah.
Mia, if today I didn't have S-Works, there would be no more X company. Like they
Yeah.
wouldn't exist without us, you know? And so it's kind of, again, it's educating the public and the audience to really understand what it really means and kind of busting those myths, you know, kind of how we're doing on our LinkedIn segment. And really, it's exactly that, you know, taking common misconceptions and turning them around and really explaining, you know, how they actually are in the implementation. Because again, I get the fears, you know, I'm someone from the US whose family's from Argentina, and I lived in Colombia for a year. And even then, you know, I could see some cultural differences, and I get how that can cause fear or maybe divides and those kinds of things. But having that open mindset, which is something that we all really need to adapt. And if you don't do it, then again, you're going to get left behind.
Yeah, I just look at it like this. Hard work is hard work. Hard work is irreplaceable. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter, where they're from. I mean, I'm married to a Mexican immigrant, and it's like I view it as like I want hard work. Like I don't like a lot of it fundamentally when it boils down to it. I don't care where you're based out of or what it is. I want somebody who wants to show up, put in the work, and at least loves transportation. They don't have to love it as much as I do, but like buys into it. And again, like, but that's where I feel like it's on the business themselves to get the buy-in from people. You know what I mean? To get the buy-in from individuals that are out there in the market that want to work and represent your company. Because again, it's that top-down approach. If you're a shitty leader, you're probably going to have a shitty culture. You're going to have a shitty job hiring people and everything else. But, I know we're almost up on time here and this is, flown by, but like this thought just came to my mind. Is there like a 12-month contract that's included with something? Like, how does that work? If I were to contract with you guys, is it's like, all right, you got to, the next 12 months we're locked in. What does that look like?
Yeah. So our contracts, I always say, are actually really flexible. And if you really read the process, it's pretty much not a month-to-month contract, but it's as needed. So let me kind of break that down a little bit more. What we have in the contract is a pretty clear roadmap as to communications with your account manager and how frequent that will be, what you guys are going to talk about, and those kinds of things. And it's also very clear in terms of providing feedback like performance reviews, right? So let's use Joe Schmo because that's always the guy I pick on. If Joe Schmo, is your employee and he's not doing well, it'll say very clearly there, here is actually a form that you can fill out and let us know that Joe's not doing well. You send us a second message a week later, hey, we implemented this plan or we have this conversation with him. He's still not doing it. We want to replace him. We want to terminate him. Perfect. We'll do so, We're pretty straightforward. It's everything we do is to make sure that we have that clear communication. So if somebody isn't performing, we can catch it before them. And if we don't catch it before them for any reason, then they can let us know. And once we have that evidence, we're able to do the same process as you would in the United States. If a termination is necessary, then a termination is unfortunate, but it's necessary, we'll implement that. So with that being said, again, our contracts can be 6 months, it can be 12 months, but really if you're following the guidelines that we've created or the roadmap that we've created, you could be flipping on a dime, if that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense, right? Because I think that's another thing that's kind of out there. And I've experienced this as I've looked at other vendors for other parts of my business and stuff. Contract labor is like, some of it it's the contracts are just insane. And I'm like, wait a second. Like, so you're telling me I got to pay you for 12 months if you do shitty work in month 1, like I still owe you 11 months worth of labor? Like, no. And I think go ahead.
No, sorry to cut you off, but that's super important. And I think that's, again, why providers like us exist, reasons why maybe people don't go directly to Colombia and hire because they don't understand the different kinds of contracts and how they work. And if they screw themselves into signing a 12-month defined contract and you fire them after month 1, you're going to have to pay 11 months of salary. So those are the things that we're kind of mitigating, or there's times where we even have to consume those costs. And that's on S-Works, right? But that's part of the model and the value that we provide to our customers.
No, I love it. Mia, I appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for joining me. How does anybody reach out to you to find out more?
No, thanks for having me on, Chris. It was great. A great time. You guys can definitely check me out on LinkedIn at Mia Mazal. S-Works Group is also on there, or sworksgroup.com. Or lastly, feel free to email me. That's also in my LinkedIn profile.
Perfect. Mia, I appreciate you joining me. Thank you so much for taking the time today. And that is going to be it for today, ladies and gentlemen. As always, if you guys can't find Mia or S-Works, just hit me up. I'll gladly put you guys in contact with her over there. But at the end of the day, you guys, we're going to continue to bring other guests on. We're going to talk about every single topic out there in the industry to help you guys have a better understanding about like what's really out there in the market. Because like I said to lead into the show, it's not as easy as snap your finger and all of a sudden you've got entrepreneurship figured out and you're a millionaire, unlike Instagram likes to make it seem. But that will be it for today, ladies and gentlemen. We will be back tomorrow. We got a guest coming on tomorrow. If you guys did get value, which I know you did, and you're not subscribed, subscribe to the show. You guys share it out there to your network, because if you see value, your network's going to see value as well. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys, and we'll be talking to you soon.